Joe appears polite and refined, but he's a serial killer, a nightmare haunting the women of the city. He uses brutal methods to murder the women he's drawn to. Joe brazenly enters his victims' homes, cracks open a beer, eats a snack to pass the time, then lounges on their bed, munching an apple and reading the newspaper. The headlines scream about the city's worst killing spree in 2 years, Joe's handiwork, having slaughtered 4 beautiful young women with his signature methods. He pets the victim's cat, waiting for her to emerge from the shower before striking. When asked, "Who are you?" Joe just smiles. He loves cats, but after each kill, he meticulously cleans the house, erasing all traces of himself. He drives a stolen car, wipes it down, and plucks a rose as a reward for his work. Joe's reasons for killing can be chillingly simple. Once, he saw a woman smile at him in a supermarket, or so he thought. She was smiling at someone behind him, but her smile captivated him. To Joe, a woman he desires must be killed, not allowed to belong to anyone else. Back home, he listens to a voicemail from his mother, a controlling, harsh, and nagging woman. His hatred for her fuels his rage, which he unleashes on his female victims, the root of his murderous impulses. Joe isn't driven by trivial or impulsive reasons. He kills for pleasure. He adores women but loves doing what they'd hate most. Carrying a briefcase of killing tools, he strolls or rides the bus, scouting his next target without leaving a trace. Pressured by his mother, Joe reluctantly visits her for dinner. Before entering, he tosses the beer can from the victim's house and the stolen car's keys into a dumpster. His mother greets him with a slap, a standard part of her parenting when she's displeased. Joe forces a smile, offering her the rose he picked, secretly pleased when its thorns prick her hand. He hands her a bag of his favorite apples to appease her. Her cooking is cold and inedible, not even flies would touch it. She called him over to berate him and demand money, forcing Joe to feign enjoyment. For revenge, he steals a piece of her jigsaw puzzle, ensuring she'll never complete it, infuriating her. The TV news reports the serial killer has claimed 6 women. Joe smirks at his masterpiece, knowing he's killed more, some bodies still rotting in car trunks, undiscovered by police. At the latest crime scene, the victim is found naked, tied to the bed, her cat's body neatly placed beside her. A gnawed apple core is stuffed in her throat, the cause of death, asphyxiation. Joe uses different weapons and methods each time, but the apple core in the victim's throat is his signature, earning him the police nickname Christchurch Carver. This time, police find an elderly woman's body in the trunk of the stolen car, its owner, whom Joe shot to steal it. From beating and stabbing to suffocation and now shooting, his methods grow more vicious. Like many men, Joe loves admiring women, seeing unique beauty in each. While appreciating them, he hunts for his next victim. He's fixated on Laura, a beautiful and kind-hearted flower seller whose angelic smile melts his heart. He stalks her, observing her life, fantasizing they've already begun a perfect relationship. To learn if she lives alone, likes cats, or can care for herself, Joe sneaks into her home. His next step is to befriend her and build a close bond. Joe evades capture by working as a janitor at the police station. After his first kill, he murdered a male janitor, the only man he's killed, and took his job. No one suspects a lowly janitor, so Joe freely enters meeting rooms, eavesdropping on investigations. He knows exactly what the police have on him and covers his tracks. 2 years later, the police have one clue: the stolen car's unique keychain, which Joe discarded in a dumpster miles away. Autopsy reports show the latest victim died of asphyxiation, with no signs of assault. The apple core's acid destroyed any DNA, leaving the case unsolved. Sally, another janitor at the station, has a crush on Joe and brings him lunch daily. Though kind, she's not his type. His heart belongs to Laura. One day, Joe notices the police in a tense meeting, crawling through an air vent to eavesdrop. He learns a woman named Daniela was strangled, with an apple left at the scene. The crime scene has her husband's fingerprints and DNA, but Chief Schroeder believes the apple points to Christchurch Carver. Joe is furious. He didn't kill Daniela, someone's copying him. Determined to clear his name, Joe plans to steal Daniela's case file while cleaning the meeting room. He overhears Schroeder and another officer rule out Daniela's husband and speculate about a copycat, but they're stumped. Joe realizes he must break into Daniela's house for clues, though the crime scene is sealed. Meanwhile, Joe's mother keeps summoning him for dinner, undercooked meat and endless nagging for money. She complains about her incomplete puzzle, even digging through the trash, where she finds the stolen car's keys. She plans to turn them over to the police, putting Joe at risk of exposure. Joe instantly recognized the keys his mother found as those from the car he stole after a murder. If she turned them over to the police, he'd be in deep trouble. He lied, claiming they were work keys he accidentally dropped. His mother nagged for details, but Joe managed to snatch the keys back. He scrubbed them clean of any traces and sealed them in a plastic bag, still uneasy about his talkative mother. After some hesitation, Joe mixed rat poison into a special coffee and cheerfully offered it to her. Though bitter, she drank it all. No more cold meals, no more nagging calls. Joe imagined a perfect world without her. On the bus home, Joe found an injured cat, a self-proclaimed animal lover. He rushed it to a vet. The beautiful nurse operated on the cat, and since it had to stay overnight, they exchanged contact info. Joe flashed a charmed smile, already plotting to kill her to keep her by his side forever. At the supermarket, buying cat food, the cashier was too engrossed in a game to notice Joe, sparking his urge to kill, breaking his rule against male victims. A woman behind him in line enthusiastically recommended cat food, revealing she's a cat lover too. Joe, obsessed with women who love cats, felt a spark and wanted to kill her to make her his forever. Her name was Melissa, and by chance, they took the same bus. They hit it off, chatting like old friends. Melissa, a reporter, brought up the city's infamous serial killer case, seeming to know a lot about it. At her stop, Joe warned her to stay safe, but Melissa invited him to escort her home for coffee, citing the cold. Joe draped his jacket over her, but the gun in his pocket jabbed her. He awkwardly explained it's a police-issued weapon he's required to carry. Melissa brushed it off, leading him through a broken-down shortcut to her place. Partway there, Melissa linked arms with Joe, then swiftly snatched the gun from his waistband. She forced him to open his briefcase, revealing apples, duct tape, a knife, and screws, the tools of a killer. Joe claimed they were evidence the police had just collected, but Melissa didn't buy it. She ordered him to strip, even his underwear. With the gun in her hand, Joe complied, then followed her order to cuff himself to a wrecked car. Excitedly inspecting his tools, Melissa ignored his excuses, sat on him, and shoved the gun in his mouth, forcing him to admit he's the Christchurch carver. She revealed she'd suspected him since spotting him lurking near Daniela's house, believing he killed her. Before he could explain, Melissa grabbed pliers, aimed at Joe's eggs, and crushed one. When Joe woke at dawn, the terror of countless women was humiliated by one. Not only was one egg destroyed, but a homeless person stole his watch, and Melissa took his tools. Seething with rage, Joe vowed to tear her apart but couldn't go to the police or hospital. He called Sally, the coworker who had a crush on him. Sally rushed over, respecting his refusal to call a doctor. Luckily, Melissa only crushed one egg, so Joe could still pass on his legacy. A former nurse, Sally stitched him up and cleaned his house. She found his stash of Christchurch Carver articles and Daniela's crime scene photos but didn't ask questions and left quietly. 2 days later, Joe woke up, pain clouding his memory of who saved him, Melissa or Sally. His spotless house, with neatly stacked articles and photos, gave him a bad feeling. His rescuer might have tipped off the police. Nursing his pain, he packed to flee, but frantic knocking stopped him. Fearing cops, he tried climbing out the window, but his injury made it impossible. Left with no choice, he opened the door to find a phone and his killing tools. Melissa sent them, knowing everything about him. She could have turned them over to the police but instead used them to blackmail him into working for her. Joe realized Sally saved him, spotting her necklace, but since she knew his secret, he decided to deal with her. Despite the pain, he dragged himself to the bus stop to head to the police station. On the way, he saw Laura, the flower seller, but knew he'd need time to heal before approaching her. Worried Sally had told Chief Schroeder his secret, Joe was relieved when Schroeder mentioned Sally was on leave to care for her sick father. At Sally's house to tie up loose ends, Joe pretended to thank her to get inside. Sally urged him to report the robbery that injured him and rest. She questioned the Carver articles and photos in his house. Joe lied, saying he was helping Schroeder investigate and stole files to study. Blinded by her crush, Sally believed him and promised to keep quiet. Joe pocketed his knife, deciding not to kill her. She was still useful for bringing him lunch. Melissa called, thrilled by Joe's killer persona and eager to learn more. Convinced he didn't kill Daniela, she tasked him with breaking into Daniela's house to find the copycat. Back home, Joe got a call from his mother. She wasn't dead, just had severe diarrhea. Regretting using too little poison, he vowed to use more next time. The next morning, Joe returned to the station, crawling through vents despite the pain to eavesdrop on the Daniela case. The husband's alibi fell apart. He claimed to be at a ball game, but a witness said he was in his car sending emails, parked near the victim's house, with enough time to kill her and return. That night, Joe went to Daniela's house. The police had lifted the seal, so he slipped in, closed the curtains, sat on her bed, sipped a beer, and figured the investigation could wait, he'd sleep first. Meanwhile, police interrogated Daniela's husband. Forensics revealed his history of domestic violence, giving him motive to kill his wife. He insisted he was innocent, blaming the Christchurch carver. Joe woke up and began reconstructing Daniela's crime scene, arranging items exactly as in police photos to hunt for clues. Using his killer's mindset, he analyzed the psychology of another murderer. After careful setup, he spotted something off. The pen in the crime scene photo didn't match the one in Daniela's house. She was playing a word puzzle when attacked, likely raising the pen to defend herself. The killer snatched it, tossed it, leaving a mark on the wall, possibly with fingerprints. Only someone with access to the crime scene could swap the pen. A cop, the copycat mimicking Joe, was likely on the force. Just then, a light flickered outside. Joe killed the house lights and hid. Chief Schroeder entered. Why was he here so late? To retrieve the pen. Joe wondered if Schroeder was the copycat. Spotting the half-drunk beer on the nightstand, Schroeder grew suspicious and checked the bathroom. Joe braced for a fight, but a call from a female officer, insisting Daniela's husband was the killer, made Schroeder rush back to the station. Holding the beer, Joe watched him leave, noting that many cops were at the scene the night Daniela died. He wanted the copycat to know the real Christchurch carver was onto them, hoping fear would make them slip. Leaving Daniela's house, Joe headed to Laura's, the flower seller. He didn't want to end their romance yet, but catching the copycat, and ensuring his own safety, excited him more. Killing Laura would boost his thrill. He broke into her house, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and found his favorite apples on the table. Knowing Laura was likely showering, he sat on her bed, eating an apple, debating whether to kill her here and dump her body at Daniela's or tie her up and kill her there. When the bathroom door opened, a man emerged. Joe hurled the beer bottle at his head and fled. His egg injury left him too weak to fight. Outside, police swarmed, likely having found his stolen car. With cops ahead and the man chasing behind, Joe hid behind a car. As the man alerted the police, Joe limped away, escaping thanks to his knowledge of the area. While struggling to flee, a car screeched to a halt. Melissa, the woman who crushed his egg, was behind the wheel. She didn't let him in the front but forced him into the trunk. Blasting loud music, she sped off, leaving Joe in agony, fearing his remaining egg would burst. Police arrived at Laura's, finding a half-eaten apple on the nightstand. Though DNA was unobtainable, the bite marks could match Christchurch carver's prior kills. The man was Laura's friend, staying at her place while she vacationed in Bali. Panicked, he described the intruder as a white man, average build, wearing a baseball cap. Melissa took Joe to the spot where she'd tortured him, his worst memory. He told her the copycat might be a cop. Thrilled, Melissa said it made the challenge worthwhile. She gave him 24 hours to find the copycat, or she'd turn over all evidence to the police. Laura's sudden trip meant Christchurch carver had a day job, unable to stalk her constantly, missing her airport departure. Her friend recalled the intruder carried a briefcase. Joe hid his, then realized ditching it suddenly would raise suspicion. At the station, Joe tried hacking into the police computer to investigate Melissa but found nothing. Cops assumed he was watching adult films and ignored him. Every officer seemed like the copycat to Joe. With 24 hours, he had to act fast. Cops signed in at crime scenes, so Joe peeked at the log while delivering coffee to Schroeder. He stole the list, intending to copy it, but didn't know how to use the photocopier. Sally offered help, but Joe snapped at her, thinking his egg stitches had torn, upsetting his mood. Hurt, Sally left. Joe ruled out suspects. The photographer wouldn't capture incriminating evidence. Sam, panting from climbing stairs, lacked the strength to kill. The cop with a broken arm was out. That left 3 suspects, including Schroeder, who might be framing Daniela's husband to cover his tracks. Brian and Robert remained. Joe sneaked into the records room, searching for files on Brian and Robert, hoping they'd be out that night so he could break into their homes. Eavesdropping, he learned Brian had a date. Joe tailed him, watching Brian skulk around a building, seemingly on guard. Breaking into Brian's house, knife in hand, Joe searched for clues. Hearing noises, he found Brian in a steamy encounter with a man. Concluding Brian was gay and unlikely to target women, Joe ruled him out. That night, Joe updated Melissa, probing for her identity and why she was obsessed with the copycat. She didn't bite, pointing out flaws in his logic. a deranged woman could be terrifying, so Rebecca, the female cop, was a suspect. Brian's preference for men didn't mean he wouldn't kill women. Schroeder might be framing Daniela's husband to deflect suspicion. Robert stayed on the list. Given the case's complexity, Melissa gave Joe another 24 hours. Furious but helpless, Joe decided to kill a woman to vent. With most women wary of the serial killer, he targeted a streetwalker. Joe lured a prostitute to Daniela's house, thinking she'd scored a rich client. He opened his briefcase, revealing his weapons. Recognizing the danger, she grabbed pepper spray, but Joe knocked it away. He strangled her, feeling relieved, then stuffed her body in a car trunk, set it ablaze, and left Daniela's house. Police received a report about a woman's charred body in a car trunk. Forensics concluded she was strangled before being burned. The convoluted case frustrated the cops, who grumbled that Christchurch Carver always struck on weekends, stealing their rest time. At the case briefing, Joe gleaned no useful info and resumed his janitorial work. Colleagues of the murdered prostitute were brought to the station for questioning. Passing Joe, they ignored him, treating him as invisible. A striking prostitute named Becky unexpectedly knew Schroeder, even greeting him warmly. Joe grew suspicious. How could a police chief know a sex worker? Was Schroeder the copycat? Joe decided to track down Becky, leaving his tool briefcase behind. He posed as a regular client, stole a car, and found her in the red light district. Flashing $100, a hefty sum, Joe dazzled her. Unbeknownst to him, police were monitoring these women. Sam, a cop, photographed Joe and recognized him. Normally invisible, Joe's partying surprised Sam, who thought it explained why Joe ignored Sally. Sensing something off, Sam prepared to call Schroeder, but a beautiful blonde tapped his car window, asking for help. At a motel, Joe told Becky he just wanted to talk, not do anything. Used to clients venting about unhappy marriages, Becky nodded. Joe asked if her clients included cops. Thanks to his generous payment, she admitted cops often visited, hiding their identities but unmistakable to her trained nose. They were rough and twisted, knowing they could get away with anything. Schroeder, though, was never a client, just helped her once. Joe realized he'd misjudged Schroeder. He wasn't the copycat. Becky described a particularly depraved cop who tied up women and nearly choked her to death. Joe paid more for details. A white man, about 30, dark hair, blue eyes. With no further info, Joe drove her home. Becky suggested asking the motel manager, a hub for sex workers, for leads. Grateful but paranoid she'd seen his face, Joe decided to kill her to keep his secret. Calling her back, he opened the trunk to stuff her in, only to find Sam's body inside. Headlights flashed. Melissa, who'd followed Joe and killed Sam, sped off. One psycho kills, another covers up, a perfect team. Joe cursed Melissa for the mess, but she claimed she'd destroyed photos of him with Becky to protect him. They were now a team. She killed, he disposed of bodies. Wanting to dump the bodies discreetly, Joe realized the car was out of gas. He learned a lesson: check the fuel gauge when stealing a car. Pushing the car to a gas station, he fumed at Melissa, stuck handling two bodies, especially Sam, heavy as an elephant. At the station, Joe ran into his dad's friend, hoping he'd leave. A police car pulled up, making Joe anxious as the old man rambled and cops glanced his way. When the tank was full, the old man spotted blood in the trunk but, with poor eyesight, mistook it for rust. Joe floored it out of there. An animal lover, Joe detoured to the vet to pick up his injured cat before disposing of the bodies, ignoring Melissa's calls, a move that had cost him later. After dropping the cat at home, Joe grabbed a shovel to bury the bodies, only to find his stolen car gone. Calling Melissa, he got no answer. Suspecting she was setting him up, to be safe, he slept in a park. Melissa called, warning him never to ignore a petty woman's calls. She'd handle the bodies and ordered him to the station. Though it was Saturday, his day off, Melissa forced Joe to go. As an invisible janitor, he figured no one would notice, but at the station, cops rushed out on a big case. The car with Sam and Becky's bodies was dumped in front of Schroeder's house, a bold taunt to the police. Melissa had wiped the fingerprints clean, and no one saw who left it. Becky knew Schroeder, and the bodies at his doorstep seemed to send a message. Rebecca got a call from the station. They'd found a witness. Joe, seizing the empty station, stole police photos, thinking they might be useful. He broke into Robert's locker, learning he was staying at a hotel due to marital issues. Joe stole photos of Robert and his wife, covering his tracks before the cops returned. Chatting with Sally, Joe froze when he saw Melissa, dressed respectably, at the station. Panicked, he worried she'd snitch. Sally noticed his unease and mentioned the discovered bodies, saying the woman, Melissa, was a witness describing the killer and sketching his face. Joe, terrified, wondered what this crazy woman was up to. Fleeing the station without changing his uniform, Joe boarded a bus, only for Melissa to follow. Furious, he wanted to shove his briefcase down her throat. She showed him the sketch and description, a man nothing like Joe. It was her ex-boyfriend, who betrayed her. She aimed to ruin him while misdirecting the police, buying Joe time to find the copycat. Joe silently vowed never to cross this deranged, terrifying woman. Police found Sam's car, deducing he was killed in it, then moved to another vehicle and dumped at Schroeder's. The killer was either cocky or insane. Still, the police had no leads. Posing as a cop, Melissa visited the motel where sex workers operated, paying the manager to identify the cop who frequented it with Becky. The police investigation at the motel was intense, but the manager quickly pegged Melissa as no ordinary cop. She demanded another $100 New Zealand to talk. After the third $100 bill, she admitted knowing a cop who liked tying up women. The fourth bill got her to point him out from photos Joe stole from the station. The fifth bill confirmed his identity. Joe's life was falling apart. His mother invited the old man from the gas station for dinner. Back home, Joe found his beloved goldfish dead, toyed with by the stray cat. Furious, he chased the cat out. Just then, the vet called, saying the cat's owner was found and would pay to reclaim it. Joe, unable to contain his rage, lied that the cat was hit by a car, then smashed his phone, venting his anger at his mother and childhood injustices. With the case stalled, Brass sent Stevens to oversee, ordering all cops to speed up. Joe buried his two goldfish, vowing revenge for them against the cat, his mother, Melissa, and the copycat. Rest in peace. Melissa, seeing Joe's distress, went easy on him, revealing the motel manager identified Robert as the kinky cop. Joe, yet to fully investigate Robert, needed to confirm if he was the copycat. Joe staked out Robert's hotel but was caught when Robert appeared behind him, demanding why Joe was following. Joe lied, flattering Robert as a civilized man and asking for a promotion reference. Robert wasn't fooled. Already miserable from his crushed egg, Joe, now humiliated, swore revenge. He skipped work to return to Robert's hotel. Sally, unable to reach Joe, used the spare key from stitching his egg to enter his house. It was filthy and empty. The stray cat ran in, and Sally grabbed a traffic ticket to shoo it out. Cleaning Joe's place, she found her gifted necklace in the trash. Heartbroken, she checked Joe's notebook, found his mother's address, and visited her. Joe had lied to his mom, claiming he sold cars, not cleaned at the station. Sally, puzzled by Joe's recent odd behavior, grew suspicious. At the hotel, Joe intimidated a staffer for a master key. Not killing, he tied her up, used the key to enter Robert's room, and compared a kitchen knife to one with Robert's fingerprints. He bagged the fingerprinted knife in paper, the clean one in plastic, then returned to the staffer, slipping her cash and a knife to cut herself free. Fearing for her life, she wouldn't snitch. While cleaning, Joe stole Robert's personal number and overheard Stevens offering a $2.5 million reward for catching Christchurch Carver. Cops discussed splitting it. Joe laughed, thinking he'd claim it by turning himself in. He texted Robert, "Idiot, you killed Daniela, right? 5 minutes to reply, or I tell the cops," then watched Robert's reaction. If innocent, Robert would show colleagues the text, but he paced nervously, proving he was the copycat. Robert, sharp, guessed Joe sent the text, dragged him into the tool room, locked the door, and searched him for a phone. Joe had tossed it in a water bucket. Claiming he only used landlines, Joe watched Robert call the number. No ring. Robert left. Melissa couldn't reach Joe either, and he explained the phone was waterlogged. She suggested drying it in rice. Learning he ditched it to dodge Robert, she let it slide. They figured Robert would confront the greedy motel manager, who might betray them. They decided to eliminate her. Back home, Joe put his phone in rice. His mother called, saying she and the old man slipped while showering together and were hospitalized. She mentioned someone visited looking for Joe, thinking it was Melissa, who denied it. Joe brushed it off. He and Melissa broke into the motel. Seeing the manager's stunning goldfish, Joe planned to steal them. Melissa shoved the manager down, and they tied her up. Joe stabbed her with the clean knife, relishing her screams. He smeared her blood on Robert's fingerprinted knife, bagged it in paper, and they left with the goldfish. Impressed by Joe's plan to frame Robert, Melissa grew fond of him. Joe tossed the fingerprinted knife in a random dumpster. the traffic ticket from his house tied to the car used for bodies. He planted it strategically to connect the evidence. The phone in Rice worked again. Joe texted Robert, "Get 50 grand ready tomorrow, or I go to the cops," then powered off and slept, calling it a perfect night. Next day, cops discussed the manager's death. Joe texted Robert, "Got the cash," then ditched the phone in a trash can. Robert, rattled but unsure who texted, took it out on Joe. Colleagues were shocked by Robert's outburst. In the tool room, Joe planned a stronger threat for Robert, but Sally walked in, startling him, making his phone drop. Sally, recalling his no-phone claim, questioned it. Joe lied, saying he just bought it. Sally, sensing his oddness, comforted him, mentioning her visit to his mom and her new hospital nursing job. Joe was thrilled to finally ditch Sally, but her suspicions grew, and she secretly followed him, curiosity that would spell her doom. Joe went to Daniela's house, texting Robert, 30 minutes, bring cash to Daniela's. Robert arrived, and Sally watched from afar. Inside, Joe smashed a pan into Robert's face. Robert's bag held not cash but a hammer and killing tools. His methods mirrored Joe's. The pan wasn't enough. Robert woke, and they fought fiercely, biting ears and clawing eyes. Weak, Joe was pinned, pummeled by Robert. Sally approached, about to knock and intervene. Seconds from being choked out, Joe was saved when Sally's phone rang. Her dad had a medical emergency, and she rushed off, unaware of the chaos inside. Grabbing a cup, Joe smashed it on Robert's head, shattering it and knocking him out. Joe dragged Robert to the second floor, tied him to a chair, planted a traffic ticket in his hand to transfer fingerprints, taped his mouth shut, and began his grand plan. The next day, from a payphone, Joe anonymously tipped the police about a bloody knife in a dumpster, possibly the murder weapon. At the station, he saw Schroeder, skeptical but intrigued. Step 1 worked. When no one was around, Joe broke into Robert's locker and planted the ticket. The apple's bite marks or suspect statements didn't matter. The car with the body was enough to pin years of murders on Robert. Schroeder found the bloodied knife, and forensics confirmed Robert's fingerprints. Searching Robert's locker, police found the ticket, leading to a car with a long rotted corpse in the trunk. Robert seemed to be the depraved Christchurch carver. Police searched Robert's home and hotel but couldn't find him, assuming he'd fled. Joe and Melissa returned to Daniela's house, where Robert, bound for a day and night, was weak. Learning Joe was the Christchurch carver, evading police for 2 years under their noses, Robert was stunned. Under pressure, he confessed to mimicking Joe to frame him for Daniela's murder. It was a bloody love story. At a party, Robert met Daniela and her husband. Seeing her misery from domestic abuse, also abused by his wife, Robert bonded with Daniela, and they began an affair, meeting at her house. But Daniela fell for another man and threatened to accuse Robert of rape to end things. In a heated argument, Robert snapped, strangling her when she stabbed him with a pen. To escape blame, he left an apple by her body, framing Joe, and swapped the bloody pen with his own at the scene. Joe scoffed at Robert's remorse, hardly a proper killer. Melissa added, "I'm here for Melissa." She revealed why she became a maniac. Her sister, also named Melissa, was raped and murdered by a cop in Robert's unit. Despite evidence, the station covered it up, clearing the cop. Later, he vanished. Melissa's smile hinted she'd killed him. Avenging her sister, she began hunting corrupt cops, becoming a she-devil. Initially mistaking Joe for one, she spared him upon learning he was a janitor, obsessed with finding the copycat to punish such cops. Joe politely handed Melissa a knife. She slit Robert's throat, licking the blood off her hand, smiling with satisfaction. Joe burned the house, drove Robert's body to the suburbs, and buried it where police wouldn't find it, staging his escape. Unbeknownst to Joe, Sally caused trouble. Police found Robert's and Sally's fingerprints on the ticket, from when she used it to shoe a cat. Schroeder, trusting Sally, doubted she was complicit but questioned her prints. Sally recalled Robert meeting Joe and handling the ticket, crying in heartbreak. Oblivious, Joe met Melissa at a park. The two psychos fell for each other, drawn by their shared evil. One carried a gun for protection, the other recorded killings for blackmail, a romance like dung beetles and manure. While other couples stargazed, they scoped out women, picking targets, thriving in bloodshed. Thinking he was free, Joe was confronted by Sally, who hid his secret from the police and urged him to turn himself in. Stunned, Joe didn't know police were tailing Sally. Seeing them argue, Schroeder ordered a surround. Joe's tools spilled everywhere. Grabbing a gun, he took Sally hostage, desperate to escape, but police had him cornered. Spotting Melissa in the distance, they locked eyes, understanding each other. Joe aimed the gun at his head. Melissa nodded in approval. To everyone's shock, he pulled the trigger. The bullet grazed him, causing only a minor wound. Think Joe did it to save Melissa? That it was love's power? A romantic tale? No, it was their plan. New Zealand has no death penalty, and prison conditions are good. What will Melissa do outside? Season 2 might be even wilder.
I'm coming for you, Joe.
Here is the complete summary of Dark City, The Cleaner. What do you think of the show? How would you rate it out of 10? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for your interest and support. Goodbye and see you again.